feels like there's this cultural shift in the Bitcoin community towards, and is biased towards action, like really trying to uncover and unpack what are like the underlying principles of Bitcoin, and what are like kind of like what's the doctrine and what's the thesis, and what is like the cultural shift that it's really trying to do, away from just hodling and kind of speculation. How do we rewrite the rules with those principles, I think is going to be kind of the next wave of building.
Ismael, how are you doing?
I'm good. Great to see you, Jordan.
Yeah, likewise. It's good to have you on the podcast.
No, thank you for inviting me. Honored.
Yeah, it's well, we met for the second time again in Prague.
And yeah.
We were just saying how.
Where was the first time? Was the Alliance launch, the HRF Alliance launch, right?
Yeah, in London, and then. Yeah, I didn't know you were at the Prague conference, and then we just kind of like crossed paths and kind of saw each other at the same time. It was like, it's such a good conference. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I wrote a few things I like kind of took away. But honestly, one of the big things I took away that I haven't mentioned yet is just the confidence that it just reinforced in me that change is really going to come from builders and people who are actually on the ground, just building out tools of change. And that really came out of like several kind of the speakers and just the vibes coming from people in the audience. So I really appreciated that. That was really, really good.
Yeah, it does feel like, yeah, likewise. I feel like now's the time to take action of like people who are in that room, maybe in the audience, because obviously the people on the stage are building within Bitcoin. But as you said, like it felt like there was a strong message of, okay, this is our time. However many years you've been in Bitcoin, like this is our time to take action, do something, no matter what your passion is, what your what you like you can bring Bitcoin into that. And I guess that's kind of, I didn't mean to segue that into our discussion, but it works perfectly, so I'm rolling with it. Can you tell the audience just like a little bit of a summary about what Evergive is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Evergive makes most sense if you think about it within kind of the sustainability narrative. So sustainability has made its way into like loads of different areas of our society today, it seems, except charity. So what we've done on Evergive is asked ourselves, what does sustainability look like for Jordan when he's making a donation? How can we make it renewable, sustainable, and last forever? And that's essentially what Evergive does. So it takes your donation and it holds it in Bitcoin, and it allows your favorite charities to borrow against the Bitcoin. So then they can access capital for their needs today, but still preserve value long into the future and forever. So if you think about Bitcoin as forever money, then Evergive is forever charity.
I like that. It's because I guess you've kind of seen a problem. What is the problem that you see with the current charity model?
Yeah, I mean the current problem really is, I mean, we were just speaking before we hit record about kind of high time preference and low time preference, and how that and the downstream effects on society of that. And charity is no different. Like where individuals and institutions are like trapped in these high time preference systems. So you have like charities who are relying on constant short-term donations to survive. You have people who are just giving with all the goodwill in the world, people who are giving emotionally, reactively, and often once, as in not sustainably. And the fiat machine just erodes the efforts on both sides, on kind of the charities relying on like kind of short-term donations to fill a gap today, as well as the people giving emotionally. The money melts, the impact erodes and shrinks, and the dependence kind of like just expands. So then philanthropy and charity then becomes like this other hamster's wheel, right? So then our mission then becomes, how do we make how do we solve that problem and make donations infinite in both kind of time and value. And what does a charitable platform look like on the Bitcoin standard with Bitcoin principles, right? If you're going to take the Bitcoin principles and rewrite the rules of charity, then it would look something close to Evergive.
That's what, because we had such a good discussion. Because I came to your place and we just chatted about like charities. Because as many people on this podcast know, one of my favorite episodes was with Antonia Rupel from Save the Children, and like I love that angle of Bitcoin, like the humanitarian side of it. And then when we started getting chatting, it is like you're building, the charities or the charity that's fit or helping charities into a Bitcoin standard world, essentially.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
It took me a while to actually like process it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It did, because I hadn't actually applied that, and like I was still thinking in a fiat mindset when it came to charities as well. Which well, I thank you for that to get me thinking that way. But I just wanted to on you.
No, yeah. So I was just saying, it's. I think it's super important. Again, we were just speaking before this, before we hit the record button, about how it feels like there's this cultural shift in the Bitcoin community towards, and is biased towards action, and not just like kind of hodling and stuff. So, like really trying to uncover and unpack what are like the underlying principles of Bitcoin, and what are like kind of like what's the doctrine and what's the thesis, and what is like the cultural shift that it's really trying to do away from just hodling and kind of speculation. How do we rewrite the rules with those principles? I think is going to be kind of the next wave of building.
I totally agree, and like let's unpack, because I wanted to give the listeners context around what you're building, like everything like that. But then, like, let's unpack, like, you've got history within like the charity fundraising sector already. Like, that's what you've been working in, building in for a long time, and you've just kind of applied Bitcoin to that now. So, like, can you take us back to whenever you feel relevant, and like, how did you start that journey?
Yeah, I mean, charity's always been like a big feature of my life, kind of growing up, family and community, etc. So it started off as like a side gig whilst I was building out my other kind of company. I was in tech and I was in e-commerce, but then very quickly that started to feel quite kind of soulless and hollow. It served its purpose. We did like kind of really well, and it eventually went on to kind of sell the company. But whilst we were building that out as an escape, I was building out this other kind of charitable platform. And it was like literally just a 2-week project that we threw up, and we raised over like £100,000. And we were just shocked that anyone would want to put their credit card details into that scrappy site with like this logo outstretched and stuff. But they did, and we took that as kind of validation. But long story short, over the last 6-7 years, we'd raised on a part-time basis over $100 million for charities around the world. And the light bulb moment really was like after we had passed that big milestone of $100 million, instead of feeling really kind of proud of that fact, I started to feel like kind of quite pissed that a lot of that effort went into kind of further kind of entrenching systems and structures that I felt I wasn't confident was actually making the world a better place, and probably was doing more to create more dependency onto the fiat system. And that's what started the rabbit hole to be like, okay, cool, something's broken here.
How did you, like, 100 million's no small number. That's like super impressive. You kind of just brushed over that. You're like, yeah, 100 million. Like, how did you manage to do that in such a short space of time as well?
Yeah, I mean, we were used to like kind of building out products and building out in niches. So the product is called My 10 Nights, and we had kind of just found a niche of users who really like to give during kind of the Ramadan period, and just really customize the giving experience to make it really authentic for that time of year in a way that would feel dry or like really kind of like mechanic on other platforms like Just Giving or GoFundMe. So we found the need. We really understood the users, and we built this out. And yeah, we're builders, so we've been building products for a while. And yeah, I did brush over it, but yeah, like looking back.
Where do you think that drive comes from to be a builder? Yeah, I've been speaking to someone else about this recently on a different podcast that's going out, but it's like, yeah, I'd be super interested to think, like, because going back to the Prague as well is like encouraging people to be builders and take action, do things.
Yeah.
But there's some people that's just like, okay, you're a builder, you love to do this and like build things. Like, where do you think that comes into play?
It's a great question, and I've thought about this many times. I've just really found it difficult to locate like specific reasons. But I feel like at a fundamental level, I really enjoy kind of creating method and order out of like dysfunction and chaos. And so taking that chaos and trying to create meaning out of it for users, for myself. And a lot of it comes from trying to solve problems for myself that I'm just frustrated isn't out there in the world yet. Whether despite how like kind of crazy people might think about it, even Evergive just building out a platform, essentially a strategic Bitcoin reserve for charities that's exclusively 100% Bitcoin. That was met with a lot of like kind of resistance and still till today very kind of controversial. But I feel like builders have a way to kind of phase out that noise and think, okay, what's actually valuable, and let me try to create some kind of meaning out of it.
Yeah, it's like ignoring the noise and like just focusing on the signal, I guess, is a good thing that builders are the thing that builders are good at.
Yeah. And I think people as well who just don't have as much care for their own mental health because it's rough.
Oh yes, I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, if like your mental health isn't as much of a priority as it humanly should be, then maybe it's also you become a bit predetermined to this path too.
Yes, yeah, I feel you with that. You kind of need to have a like an addictive. I feel that I've got like a very addictive personality, or an obsessive personality, I would maybe say, of when I want something, like you go for it, and it's like all or nothing essentially, which building a company is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Right, moving on to your Bitcoin journey.
Yeah.
So you've been building all these things outside of Bitcoin. When did you come across Bitcoin? And then when did you think, okay, maybe I should actually be doing something and contributing to this?
Yeah, I know. Great question. So my kind of like entry into Bitcoin really came in two waves. So I should really give a lot of credit to my co-founder, Mohammed Yasselhaq, who, when we co-founded a previous company, he's also the co-founder of Evergive, but a previous company around 2015, 16, he had already been a Bitcoiner. So he's a retired hedge fund manager, very kind of financially literate. And he was kind of like shilling this coin, like this Bitcoin coin. And I understood it as with my kind of product hat on, that like the value of the only absolutely scarce asset in the world, and it being decentralized. I felt that there was like a place for it. And I was quite happy that he was kind of like DCAing in our kind of like reserves into kind of like this thing that he really believed in, and ignored it after that. And the second wave of Bitcoin came really after this $100 million kind of milestone, where we thought to ourselves, man, like if we're gonna go through like the effort of raising another $100 million, we better see some real change in the world, right? Because we just felt that we were raising similar amounts every year for the same kind of causes and the same charities. And we found it really hard to like kind of attribute like our effort to anything kind of really concrete and material in the world. And then that's when I started to dig deeper on like the structural reasons why no matter how much money that we are raising and how much people are donating all around the world, things arguably are getting worse in many respects. And then I kind of went down. I didn't immediately get to Bitcoin as a result of that, but very quickly got to Bitcoin. Binged all of Alex Gladstein's material online. Read his books, Hidden Repression, Check Your Financial Privilege, all of his articles, as well as reading some other material from a former lecturer of mine at university called Jason Hickel, who opened up my eyes to it in 2017, but I didn't have the contextual information at that time to really appreciate the power of what he was saying, which is he wrote an article in 2017 called Aid in Reverse. And what his argument really was at the time was that in our culture, we've been told this lie. And I believed in this lie. And this lie was that us rich countries in the OECD are developing the poor, when really quite insidiously, it's actually the poor countries who are developing the rich. And his argument goes that it seems, or the propaganda will tell us, that colonialism is a thing of the past, and yes, we kind of enriched ourselves kind of unduly from all of these other parts of the world, but right now we're giving hundreds of billions of dollars every year to charities and to kind of the global south and developing world, and that's all evidence of our kind of benevolent goodwill. But really, if you look at the data, and he kind of cites a lot of really interesting comprehensive studies done by kind of the Global Financial Integrity, kind of the think tank in the US, Norwegian University, that goes to show in one particular study in 2012, the capital flow from Western institutions into kind of like the global South was 1.2 trillion, but that pales in comparison to the capital flow the other direction, and that capital flow was 3.3 trillion. A more recent study puts it more at 5 trillion. So there's a net, like a discrepancy of north of $2-3 trillion every year going from kind of the global south and developing world to kind of Western institutions, whether that's through loans, aid, capital flight. They measured all of the different flows of money and came to that conclusion in perhaps the most comprehensive study done. So then I uncovered that during kind of or rediscovered that from what Jason was saying, like at university, and then went down. But then Jason really appreciated what he stands against, but then Bitcoin didn't really feature in his thesis. So through kind of my co-founder, Mohammed Yeselhak, and binging on Alex's material, things really started to click that if at the very base layer things are distorted, then nothing is going to really make sense at the layers above that. And nothing did make sense for me. And so without restoring kind of a base layer that is incapable of lies, we end up with a whole bunch of lies on top of that. And that's when I pivoted, and from all of the kind of like fiat charitable efforts I was involved in, and kind of redirected them to something that I felt was going to be productive. And then that's when Evergive came about, and building out a charitable platform on a Bitcoin standard with Bitcoin principles at heart, and shifting hopefully kind of the philanthropic community onto what high time preference looks like, and what kind of aligned incentives in the world look like.
Wow. I didn't know a lot of that. That's like one, actually. What did you study at university?
I did law and anthropology.
Okay. And can you share with me after the Jason Hickel, all the stuff? Because I know there'll be people listening and they'll be like, okay, how do I listen to this? Because I'm like that. Or how do I look at this? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, that's really interesting, just to look at the capital flows from developed to developing, because you don't think of it as coming back round, or a lot of people don't think of it as coming back round. It's like it's like the Western countries just giving that.
I believed it too. I believed it too. It was a very sobering and almost kind of like, if I'm honest, quite a sickening feeling to realize that a lot of the success that we have in the West and a lot of the comforts that we enjoy in the West are, yes, a function of a lot of like kind of the values and the freedoms that we have over here, but also very much a result of a lot of the nefarious kind of economic policies that we deploy abroad. That means that labor is like dirt cheap, exports are dirt cheap, and it means that we can enjoy all of these things in our side of the world, but at the expense of like some guy in Congo. It's a realization that we shy away from a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. So being on so this then led you to Evergive and building, I like how you're saying, a strategic Bitcoin reserve for charities. I love that. Because now a strategic Bitcoin reserve, people know what that is. So a lot of people in the space, and like that helps, because for me, it wasn't an easy thing to get my head around, and like what you're doing. So like being able to put it in that context really, really helps.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's always helped, I think, when building product, that you can kind of draw parallels, whether it's like with the Bitcoin community, the strategic Bitcoin reserve for charities, they understand kind of like the low time preference of it and kind of the long-term thinking of it, as well as kind of like the sustainability community outside of the Bitcoin world, where they kind of can connect with, right, like how we, in so many other areas of the world, we appreciate investments and compound interest, etc. But in the charity world, we have a much lower standard for it. So yeah, and it's also about, like, as you see, like all of these strategic Bitcoin reserves and treasury companies kind of proliferate all around the world. It's really about making sure that the causes and the organizations who are actually advancing humanity's welfare are not priced out of the future, and they're really a part of this wealth creation, rather than being sidelined.
Yeah. I asked you this question before, but did you take any inspiration from Charity Water is a charity that I've been following for a long time? They've got something called the Bitcoin Trust, which is where they were saying, instead of you donating to us and we just immediately switch it into fiat and then put that to causes, we're going to hold on to this for 5 years, and then we'll decide what to do with it, but a minimum of 5 years. And I've been I love what they've been doing, and like they've got a great story, a Bitcoin story behind them as well, because I believe like Tony Hawk was one of the first people to donate to it, the skateboarder. And I also, they've got a top, like, I think it's 250 people that have donated to the Bitcoin Trust. And I donated so I could get my name as, I'm number 250. I wanted to be amongst everyone that was up there. But yeah, did you take any inspiration for that, or was that something you came across after?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it when it was happening, and took inspiration from it, and kind of many others. I love Charity Water as a charity. We work with them as well across kind of all of our or a lot of our products, and I think that was quite kind of safe for them to do at that time. But where I hope Charity Water and charities in general go is more towards a kind of a serious kind of position on Bitcoin, because selling it after 5 years or 10 years and putting it back into fiat kind of undermines kind of the macro vision of kind of furthering the adoption of Bitcoin and actually integrating it into like kind of day-to-day life, and using it as a disruptive tool to restore real freedom for people. whereas fiat obviously doesn't have that coded into its technology, right? But yeah, I love Charity Water as a brand and as a charity. They do great work. We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for them, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. But yeah, we'll continue to be inspired by a lot of like just the builders in the Bitcoin community, just like these really kind of authentic, selfless, mission-driven people building in the Bitcoin community that remain kind of nameless and faceless, and are building the future that our current systems don't give us. Those are really our heroes, and are kind of who've inspired this.
That's amazing. It's so good. So for anyone, so I think we've given like the big picture of like what it is, but then I really want to dive into like, how does it all work? Because as I said, like it took me a while to get used to it. And I'm like, yeah, we've said like the strategic Bitcoin reserve for charities, but then what's happening with, say, like, can I donate? Can people donate that are absolutely listening? And where does the flow then go?
Yeah, absolutely. So then it's completely accessible to anybody, retail donors from the public, institutions, etc. So the way that it works is a donation is made on our platform, and that goes to an independent. So at all times, we're Bitcoiners and we believe in like decentralization at its core. So at no point like we're in the money flow. We're not. So that donation goes to an independent third party called a donor advised fund, which acts like an escrow for charities. And then the donor advised fund holds all of the Bitcoin in OnRamp, who I believe. So then they are our kind of multi-institutional custodian for all of our Bitcoin. So it's held there to increase security and reduce kind of like risk and liability. And so then so ultimately we have like an aggregate meta Bitcoin wallet, and then charities then have like sub wallets within that. And so eventually what will happen is that the Bitcoin that they hold in their wallet address will then be transferred onto their own treasuries as soon as they're familiar with the technology. I think it's pretty premature at the moment, so we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them. But once they're familiar with the technology, how to manage it, how to look after it, and also commit constitutionally to kind of the intention of the donor to make it last forever, then we'll transfer that onto their own kind of treasury, and then they can borrow against that Bitcoin. We're in talks right now with Strike to facilitate our lending for the charities. Had a good chat with Jack Mallers and Dylan at Prague, who are super helpful. So hopefully we'll be kind of rolling that out soon, lending service. So what that essentially allows the charities to do is benefit from the Bitcoin today, but without selling the Bitcoin, and really preserving that value long into the future. And that's fundamentally it. And us as an organization, we have a fair bit of Bitcoin that we've amassed. So nothing like strategy. So we've got about 17 Bitcoin. Let me just like kind of like caveat that. We only launched earlier this year in January, and we've got like over 20,000 users already, and amassed Bitcoin through them. We as a charity, as an organization, we do award grants to various organizations, particularly organizations that are really mission aligned and join us in this kind of bigger macro fight to restore financial freedom through restoring sound money.
So these conversations with the charities, how are they going down? Because if you're saying like,
I hope you save this for the end, but yeah.
How are the conversations going? Because for me, a feeling is like, we are within Bitcoin, we are starting, I will say starting, to like hit a tipping point of, you can actually get in the front door now.
Yeah,
And
like,
before you got it just
yeah,
slammed.
yeah. We had like red buttons on the tables calling security to get us out. Like,
how are the conversations going? Because like it's a learning process, as you said, of
of
like
course.
you if you're going to say like you need to have a sub wallet that's like the charity, and but there obviously a lot of them might not be ready for that.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a lot of education involved as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're quite fortunate that, like, timing wise, we're still at the cusp, as you say. So we're still a bit early for people to really or immediately understand it, but we can get like maybe a toe through the door right now. And it really helps the fact that it's being legitimized more and more through the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the US, more like nation states adopting it, more prominent figures speaking fondly about it. Um, Not necessarily in our country here in the UK, but but soon, hopefully, but abroad for sure. And so it's definitely allowed us. It's given us their ear. So the way that I mean, one of the biggest I mean, David Sachs, a prominent, the cryptos are, but also a prominent builder as well, said this at one point where like kind of first time founders think about products and second time founders think about distribution. And so a really key kind of art that you have to master, I think, as a product builder is how you're going to distribute this new product or this new technology. And so for us, we realized that the charities were quite reticent and quite reluctant to because they're also so like sensitive to public opinion as well. So if they to go out with a bold Bitcoin position prematurely, they probably have like a lot of like churn on their monthly donations, etc. So then we went about it through the donor route. So we proved that there's a lot of donors who actually want this. And we very quickly got over 20, I think it's over like 25, 26,000 donors now on our platform without much marketing at all, without spending any a penny in marketing. And so we're able to put a much more compelling proposition to the charities and say, look, the donors want it, the donors are here, you had better come here because then there's an opportunity cost essentially for you. And it's just like proof of concept that this is something that your donors also want, because donors can also elect to choose different charities. And if 1,000 have chosen charity water, then we tell the charity water in this case that there's a lot of interest in making you sustainable, right? So because that's the underlying promise of Bitcoin, but also like of Evergive, which is for donors, it's making your impact in the world infinite. And it's for charities, it's putting you on a path to financial security forever. So I think the entry point for donors is a much more kind of wholesome one into the crypto space than typical, because they immediately get introduced to Bitcoin and not crypto. And thereby they're introduced to Bitcoin as a practical solution to a real world problem. How do we solve kind of the time and value problem of donations and make it infinite in time and in value? And it's like, oh, there's no other technology or no other platform that can help my donation actually just not die. So they're coming into it with really kind of like a wholesome narrative. So it's not always the kind of Bitcoin drum that we need to kind of beat. Very often for donors, it's we're solving the real problem for you, and for charities, it's we're solving the sustainability problem for you. And with a lot of our early charities, we're also just making it a lot more kind of easy to access our product, because we're underwriting a lot of kind of like the risk for them, and so it's quite easy for them to get involved.
How does it work with so saying that there's a load of donors here to the charity, going to the charity saying there's a load of donors here, and they're like, oh yeah, cool. You might not have experienced this yet because I don't know what charities you've got, yeah, but ones that maybe don't understand Bitcoin, because we're using Charity Water as an example,
yeah,
but they clearly understand Bitcoin to an extent anyway.
Yeah.
So they've got the donors, but then the education piece. is surely that's really important, because you don't want to say we've got this Bitcoin that's getting donated to you, but like you don't want them to go and just sell it straight into fiat then.
Yeah, that's the thing. So when we are onboarding charities, there is, like you said, a whole education process, and they really have to like constitutionally buy into our narrative to access our audience, to abide by and uphold the original intentions of the donor. Because, like we were mentioning earlier, anytime that Bitcoin is sold back into fiat, really undermines our mission. So they really have to kind of get on board on that, and that's the whole process, and that's kind of a number of calls, or many calls with the charity to get them to understand that. But ultimately, they realize that it's an asset on their treasury that they can borrow against, and it lives within Evergive until they're ready to kind of receive that responsibility that the donors have put on them. So until kind of like they fully buy into that, we make sure that we protect the donors' interest by holding it until we get the charities to come on board. But as stark as it may seem, particularly here in the UK, like the trend really is going in a positive way. Like 70% of the top charities in the US are now at least accepting Bitcoin. So like the trend really is up and to the right. So we're basically betting on Bitcoin winning.
Yeah, it's why did you I'm trying to think like the custody angle. So you've come out and said, because that's a big thing for people that like they want to know that this thing is safe, their donations are safe, and like you've addressed that quite well with by being very transparent with everything that you're doing, and then holding it with an organization or multi-sig through on-ramp. Like how important was that through the whole process of this?
It was essential, and it really goes back to what we were saying earlier. If you really kind of subscribe to not only Bitcoin but the principles that underpin Bitcoin's kind of doctrine, these are the kind of things that you think about, like right from the outset, in terms of what does transparency look like, what does decentralization look like, what does custody look like, and having been kind of in the Bitcoin space prior to that, having built out kind of charitable products as well, and appreciating the concerns from that perspective, it was fairly kind of straightforward to preset the conditions that would have to be true for a fund that lasts forever. Even the choice of Bitcoin, when a lot of people ask us, fine, Bitcoin, some exposure to Bitcoin, but you've gone all in and 100% on Bitcoin. There's a number of reasons for that. But one reason is that if you did have a forever fund, one of the characteristics that you'd want about with that fund is that it's transparent, right? So then the charities can see at any one point in time that, like, proof of reserves, right? That the money is there in their wallet. And so that transparency was baked in by design right from the outset.
How does that work? So that made me laugh quite a lot, because I battle this quite a lot with people saying I need to diversify.
Yeah.
Me as an individual saying I need to diversify.
Yeah.
And I really struggle with that, because I can't see past Bitcoin and Bitcoin products as well. Like, how are you battling that if you're going in and saying that we are Bitcoin only, and that's all we'll ever be? Do you get that like resistance back when people say, "Oh, you should probably diversify that"?
Yeah. I mean, people look at us like we have like a terminal disease when we say. Yeah, I mean that's a common kind of objection that we get. But ultimately, I really like kind of Michael Saylor's quote on this, that diversification just means taking money away from the winner. Firstly, but secondly, when we were going into it, with Evergive, we weren't just creating a Bitcoin treasury company for the sake of it. We were really trying to solve a real problem. How do we make your impact in the world last forever? And how do we make charities financially secure forever? So we went through. It wasn't as though we were Bitcoin purists at the time to think, okay, we have to make Bitcoin work with this problem. It just was the only answer to this problem, right? So, there was a number of other things that we explored, whether that was like real estate, and we thought to ourselves, if we were to buy out $1 billion, if at scale, if we were to buy out $1 billion worth of London real estate in Belgravia, that would probably be bad for society. Like it would cause like massive inflation, and the younger generation who are already struggling to get on the housing ladder would probably be more screwed, right? And that's just aside from the other arguments about counterparty risk and you can just in forever fund we have to think about conditions not on a 20-year timeline but on a 500-year timeline. Who knows who owns Belgravia in 500-year time, right? So there's a number of factors. Even gold, like gold was the second best thing, but a number of things that just eliminated gold as an option, because we thought, okay, just at scale again over a long enough period of time, the custody fees will just erode the value of gold, and we were genuinely only left with Bitcoin. I promise. Like it was Bitcoin.
All roads go to Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And so we feel confident that we can kind of like academically and financially put the argument to charities and objectors that we are trying to solve a problem, and this is the only asset that solves this problem. This problem wouldn't be solvable were it not for Bitcoin. We would have to be working on something else.
And what I love that you say forever fund as well, because that's kind of, Bitcoin's a forever asset, or exactly. Forever money, I should probably say. Yeah. So say I'm trying to now help people picture this. Say I go on to Evergive and can I say that I want to subscribe, let's just say £10 a month.
Yeah.
And I put £10 in, as in pound fiat money.
Correct.
I get to pick a charity. And then that donation is then put into Bitcoin and put into the fund. Forever, and assigned to
your chosen charity.
Assigned to that chosen charity.
Yeah, and they can forever borrow against your the Bitcoin reserves that you've contributed. People can also donate Bitcoin as well, but obviously Bitcoin wouldn't be a subscription, but the fiat will be a subscription, and we'd every time it comes in, we'd be converting it into Bitcoin and holding it into Bitcoin.
Okay, nice. What's the next? Like, how do you see this progressing then going forward with Evergive? Like, because it's still very new, and it's also a new concept for a lot of people. Although the strategic Bitcoin reserve or the treasury companies are probably helping you quite a lot with like the comms message, and like helping people understand like everything that's going on. How what's your like plan going forward with this?
Yeah, I mean, there's massive education and cultural kind of work to do in terms of getting people to change. I mean, it's really challenging how we've done charity historically. One of the things on a recent call I was trying to explain to one of the charities who are onboarding now is that just the how logical it is. So then they have a target of raising $100,000, right? And they would typically spend about £10,000, $10,000. Let's keep it in dollars. $10,000 to raise that, whether that's through paid ads with Facebook, etc. And it will take a whole kind of army of like kind of marketing professionals and SEO optimizing teams, etc., to do that. Whereas if they were to have a much lower time preference and think ahead and stack Bitcoin on their reserves, they can, for the same cost, that $10,000, borrow against their reserve. Just say they had 500,000 on their Bitcoin reserve, borrow 100,000, at 10% interest. And so it will cost them $10,000, just like it would when they're fundraising on Facebook ads, but borrowing against their reserve. Now they get the $100,000 instantly, according to the promise of Jack Mallers. Well, near enough real time. And not only that, it's just a much more kind of cost efficient and scalable model, rather than hiring out teams who are going to expend resources that could be going to the cause itself, right? So challenging the charity kind of sector at large to think differently about how they can become sustainable, scalable, and using all of these resources and these models that Bitcoin enables is probably going to be our biggest challenge. But we're here for it, and we just ultimately believe in if we're going to be serious about changing lives, we really have to give people their freedom back, and that starts with their money. And so being part of that global mission to do that, or whether that's kind of like tangential to what we're doing, anyone who's involved in that pursuit, we see ourselves part of that, and hopefully kind of lock in with them and keep doing that and return sovereignty to people.
Yeah, and like as you were talking there, I was just trying to recall the figures that someone told me. So a good friend of mine, actually works with charities, and he was telling me the cost to these charities of making phone calls to follow up with people, and it was something insane. Like how much it costs to make these phone calls, just to chase people up for if they want to up their subscription or what is it? And I was like, what? So how much of that donation that I'm making is actually going towards like the marketing, the team, the everything behind that? Like, is anything actually going to what I'm donating for?
Yeah, I mean it's so fundamentally broken, and you look at different reports, but like average estimates are about 30% of your donation might go into fundraising fees, and so we really have an opportunity now to flatten that. And it's broken in so many ways, but but we have a chance.
Yeah, well, one with Bitcoin, but then you also like going against the status quo within this sector. And yeah, I love what you're doing, and it's good to see, and hopefully everyone like now has a clear picture of like what Evergive is and like what you are challenging and what you're actually up against as well, because like it is like that sector is a monster, and it's like been that way for so long.
And it's a really kind of like a monster is probably the good word. Like it's like gargantuan in its size as well. It's like in the US alone, there's over $600 billion donated in charity every year, and you just think about like kind of the efficiency gains that you can get out of that if you switch that asset into a low time preference kind of like context. Do you know what I mean? So I'm excited about this shift.
Yeah, me too. I'll put like all the links to you, to Evergive down below, so people can reach out if they want to give you a follow along, because you do like a Michael Saylor-esque tweets about when you're adding to the reserve. So I think when I just had a look earlier, and you were at like 17.7 or 17.17 or something Bitcoin. It's quite nice to see that.
Thank you, man. And we DCA in every month on the 21st of every month, deliberately chosen the 21st.
Good day.
Every time we get Bitcoin, we hold in and kind of DCA into that. But thanks, legend. Thank you. I love what you're doing as well, Jordan. And it's always just been a pleasure just bumping into you and speaking to you every opportunity that we've had.
Appreciate likewise, man. And hopefully get you on the podcast again at some point, and it'll be a huge fund and not.
At 600,000 Bitcoin, well, I'll be back.
Okay, nice. Holding you to it. Awesome, man. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Pleasure.